The Whitmore mansion stood like a monument to excess on the rolling hills of Connecticut, its pristine white columns catching the first rays of dawn. Inside, 27-year-old Maria Hernandez moved through the marble hallways with practiced silence, her cleaning cartwheels barely whispering against the imported Italian tile. She'd been working for the Whitmore family for 3 years now, ever since she'd fled her abusive ex-husband with nothing but her infant daughter and a desperate need for a fresh start. Maria paused outside the master suite, checking her watch. 6:30 a.m. Mr. Whitmore would be leaving for his morning run any minute now. She'd learned his schedule by heart. The 32-year-old billionaire was nothing, if not predictable. Unlike the other wealthy families she'd worked for in her early 20s, Alexander Whitmore was different. He always thanked her. He remembered her daughter's name. Sometimes, when he worked late in his study, he'd ask about her day. Really ask, like her answer mattered. She heard footsteps and stepped aside, ready to offer her usual polite, "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore," but the words died on her lips. Alexander emerged from his room, but something was wrong. His normally confident gait was unsteady, his hand clutching the doorframe for support. His face was pale, sheened with sweat. "Mr. Whitmore?" Maria's voice trembled with concern. "Are you all right?" He tried to smile, that same reassuring smile he'd given her countless times, but it faltered. "I'm fine, Maria. Just didn't sleep well." He never finished the sentence. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, his tall frame crumpling like a puppet with cut strings. The sound of his body hitting the marble echoed through the empty hallway like a gunshot. "Mr. Whitmore." Maria dropped to her knees beside him, her hands shaking as she checked for a pulse. It was there, thank God, but weak and irregular. She fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers, her voice breaking as she gave the address, explained what she'd seen. The next hours passed in a blur of sirens, paramedics, and chaos. Maria rode in the ambulance. There was no one else. Alexander's parents had passed away years ago, and he'd never married, never even had a serious relationship that Maria knew of. He'd dedicated his life to building his tech empire, to his work, to everything except himself. At the hospital, as doctors rushed him into emergency surgery, a nurse asked Maria if she was family. "I'm his housekeeper," she said quietly, feeling the inadequacy of those words. How do you explain that this man had given her and her daughter stability when her whole world was falling apart? That he'd paid for Lily's pediatrician visits without being asked when her daughter had pneumonia last winter? That he'd quietly increased her salary every 6 months, always with a note saying he valued her work, wanted to make sure Lily had everything she needed? The nurse's expression softened. "You're the closest thing to family he's got right now. You can stay." So Maria stayed, sitting in the uncomfortable plastic chair of the waiting room, her phone clutched in her hand. She needed to call Mrs. Chun, the elderly neighbor who watched Lily during Maria's work hours. She needed to tell her she'd be late. But first, she needed to know that Alexander would be okay. 4 hours later, an exhausted-looking surgeon emerged. "Miss Hernandez?" Mr. Whitmore had a massive brain aneurysm. "We've managed to relieve the pressure and stop the bleeding, but the next 48 hours are critical. He's in a coma. We won't know the extent of the damage until, if he wakes up." The "if" hung in the air like a death sentence. "Can I see him?" Maria whispered. The surgeon nodded, and a nurse led her through antiseptic white corridors to the ICU. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight of Alexander Whitmore, the man who always seemed larger than life, reduced to a still figure in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and plastic tubes. His dark hair was matted, half his head shaved for surgery, a bandage covering the incision. He looked young and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. Maria approached slowly, her hand reaching out to touch his. His skin was cold. "You're going to be okay," she told him, her voice fierce despite her tears. "You hear me, Mr. Whitmore? You're going to wake up. You have to." She stayed until visiting hours ended, whispering prayers in Spanish, the language of her childhood, the language of her heart. When the nurses finally ushered her out, she went home to her tiny apartment above the garage on the Whitmore estate, another kindness from Alexander, giving her free housing so she could save money for Lily's future. Lily was already asleep when she arrived, curled up on Mrs. Chen's couch with her favorite stuffed elephant. Maria gathered her daughter carefully, thanking Mrs. Chen in whispers, and carried Lily to their small apartment. As she tucked her daughter into bed, Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Mama," her small voice was sleepy. "Where were you?" "I had to help a friend, baby." "Go back to sleep." "Mr. Alex?" Lily asked. She adored Alexander, who always stopped to talk to her when he saw her playing in the garden, who'd given her that stuffed elephant for her 3rd birthday last month. Maria's throat tightened. "Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Alex. Is he okay?" How do you explain something like this to a 3-year-old? How do you tell her that the kind man who makes her giggle might never wake up? "He's sleeping, baby. He needs to rest. Can you say a prayer for him?" Lily nodded solemnly, pressing her small hands together. "Dear God, please help Mr. Alex wake up." "Amen." "Amen," Maria echoed, her voice breaking. That night, Maria lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her daughter's soft breathing. She thought about how precarious life was, how quickly everything could change, how one moment you're planning your day and the next you're fighting for your life. She thought about Alexander, alone in that hospital room, with no family to sit by his bedside, no one to hold his hand and tell him to fight. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would go back, and she would be there when he woke up, because everyone deserved to have someone waiting for them to come home. She just hoped desperately that he would. The days that followed blurred together into an exhausting routine. Maria would wake at 5 a.m., get Lily ready, drop her with Mrs. Chun, and arrive at the hospital by 7. She'd spend 12 hours at Alexander's bedside, talking to him, reading him the Wall Street Journal. He always read it with his morning coffee, playing classical music from her phone because she remembered seeing concert tickets on his desk once. The doctors said hearing familiar voices might help. So she talked. She told him about Lily's adventures, about the garden blooming on the estate, about everything and nothing. She told him things she'd never said when he was awake, how grateful she was, how much his kindness had meant, how he'd restored her faith in people when her ex-husband had shattered it. On the 3rd day, Alexander's lawyer arrived, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Donovan, who seemed surprised to find Maria there. "You're the housekeeper," she stated, not unkindly. "Yes. Maria Hernandez." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "Alexander spoke highly of you. I need to discuss some business matters, but I'm glad you're here. He has no family, and his instructions were clear about who should make decisions if—" She paused. "Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that." Maria learned that day just how alone Alexander truly was. An only child. Parents dead in a car accident when he was 25, the tragedy that had driven him to throw himself into work. No aunts, uncles, or cousins, at least none who'd bothered to visit. A few business associates sent flowers, but no one came to sit with him, to hope with him. It broke Maria's heart. On the 5th day, something changed. Maria was reading an article about a new tech innovation when she felt it, the slightest pressure against her hand. She froze, afraid to breathe, afraid she'd imagined it. Then it came again, stronger. Alexander's fingers twitched against hers. "Doctor." Maria's scream brought nurses running. Within minutes, The room filled with medical staff, machines beeping frantically as they checked his vitals, his responses. "He's showing signs of consciousness," the neurologist said, cautious excitement in his voice. "This is good. Very good. But we need to be patient. Waking from a coma isn't like waking from sleep. It can take time."
Time.
Maria had never been good at patience, but for this, she would wait forever if necessary. She started bringing Lily to the hospital in the evenings. The nurses bent the rules. Children under 12 weren't technically allowed in ICU, but they could see how much it meant. Lily would sit beside the bed, her small hands patting Alexander's arm, talking to him in her sweet, chirping voice about her day at preschool, about the butterflies she'd seen, about the drawing she'd made him. "I drawed you a picture, Mr. Alex," she'd say, holding up crayon masterpieces. "It's you and Mama and me and elephants. When you wake up, we can go see real elephants. You promised." Maria couldn't remember Alexander promising any such thing, but it didn't matter. Lily's certainty was absolute. Mr. Alex would wake up. Of course he would. On the 8th day, Maria arrived to find the head nurse waiting for her with an unusual expression. "What's wrong?" Maria's heart plummeted. "Is he?" "He opened his eyes this morning." Just for a moment, but Maria, he opened his eyes. And when Dr. Richards asked if he could hear us, his fingers moved in what might have been a yes. Maria's knees went weak with relief. She sank into the chair beside his bed, taking his hand, bringing it to her cheek. "Alexander," she whispered, using his first name for the first time.
"Come back.
"Please come back." His eyelids fluttered. The days continued, each bringing small miracles. A squeeze of the hand, eyes opening for longer periods. The breathing tube removed. The first croaking attempt at speech. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The brain damage appeared minimal, though they wouldn't know the full extent until he was fully conscious and could be properly tested. On the 12th day, Maria walked into his room to find him awake, truly awake, his gray eyes tracking her movement as she entered. "Alexander." She approached slowly, afraid this was another false alarm. His lips moved. The sound that came out was rough, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Maria." She burst into tears, unable to help herself, overwhelmed by relief so powerful it physically hurt. "You're awake. Oh, thank God you're awake." His brow furrowed slightly, and she realized he was trying to understand, trying to remember. The doctors had warned her this might happen, that there could be confusion, memory loss. "You had an aneurysm," she explained gently, wiping her eyes. "You've been in a coma for almost 2 weeks. But you're going to be okay. The doctors say you're going to be okay." He stared at her for a long moment, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, gratitude, something deeper she couldn't name. His hand moved weakly, reaching for hers, and when their fingers intertwined, he held on like she was his anchor to the world. "You stayed," he rasped. "Of course I stayed. Someone had to make sure you came back." The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Lily." The fact that he remembered her daughter's name, even now, made Maria's heart clench. "She's fine.
She's been so worried about you."
"She wants to see you." Scared her. "You didn't scare her. She knows you're going to be okay. She's been coming to visit, telling you about her day, showing you her drawings. She said you promised to take her to see elephants." This time his smile was real if weak. "Did I?" "Apparently. Then, I guess, I will." Maria laughed through her tears. "You need to focus on getting better first. Because of you." "What?" But Alexander's eyes were closing again, exhaustion claiming him. The doctor had warned her. Consciousness would come in waves at first. But before he slipped back into sleep, He squeezed her hand one more time and whispered 2 words that would echo in her heart for days to come. "Thank you." Maria sat there long after he'd fallen asleep, holding his hand, marveling at the strange turn her life had taken. She'd come to work for Alexander Whitmore out of desperate necessity. She'd stayed because the job was good, the pay fair, the environment safe. But somewhere along the way, without either of them noticing, something had shifted. She cared about him, not as an employer, but as a person. And he, it seemed, cared about her too. The realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Alexander's recovery was slow but steady. Within a week of waking, he'd been moved from ICU to a regular room. Within 2 weeks, he could sit up, speak in full sentences, and argue with his doctors about when he could go home. They said 6 weeks minimum. He insisted on 3. The neurological tests came back better than anyone had dared hope. No significant brain damage, no loss of cognitive function. He'd been, as one doctor put it, extraordinarily lucky. But luck, Maria knew, was only part of it. Alexander fought for his recovery with the same intensity he brought to his business dealings. Physical therapy sessions that left him exhausted and frustrated. Cognitive exercises. Medication schedules. He tackled it all with grim determination. And through it all, Maria was there. It had started as simply maintaining his employment obligations. After all, he was still technically her employer, and someone needed to manage the household. But it had become something more. She coordinated with his doctors, managed the influx of business calls and visits from colleagues, ensured he actually rested instead of trying to work from his hospital bed via laptop. "You're worse than the nurses," Alexander grumbled one afternoon as Maria firmly removed his phone for the 3rd time. "The nurses get paid to put up with you." "I do this out of the goodness of my heart," she retorted, and was rewarded with his laugh. The first real laugh she'd heard from him since before the aneurysm. Lily had become a regular fixture in his room. The nurses loved her, smuggling her graham crackers and juice boxes. She'd climb into the chair beside Alexander's bed and chatter away, completely unafraid of the hospital equipment, seeing only her friend Mr. Alex, who needed company. One evening, Maria arrived to pick up Lily and found her daughter curled up beside Alexander on the hospital bed, both of them asleep. Alexander's arm was around her small form protectively, and Lily's hand clutched his hospital gown. Her daughter's stuffed elephant sat on the bedside table, keeping watch. Maria's heart did something complicated in her chest. She pulled out her phone and snapped a picture before gently waking Lily. "Mama," Lily mumbled sleepily. "Mr. Alex, teach me a song."
Taught, baby.
"He taught you a song." "That's what I said. Teached." Lily yawned. "It's about stars and wishing." It was his mama's favorite. Maria glanced at Alexander, who had woken when she'd entered. His eyes were suspiciously bright. "She asked about my family," he explained quietly after Lily had fallen back asleep. I haven't talked about my mother in years." But Lily asked, and somehow I found myself telling her. About how my mother used to sing to me. About the song. "I'm sorry if she was intrusive."
No.
Alexander's voice was firm. "Don't apologize. It was good. To remember the good things. Not just the loss." Maria nodded, understanding more than he knew. She had her own ghosts, her own painful memories she'd buried deep. Her ex-husband's rage. The bruises she'd hidden. The fear that had driven her to flee in the middle of the night with a 6-month-old baby and $200 to her name. As if reading her thoughts, Alexander spoke again. "I never asked, about Lily's father. But I've wondered." Maria tensed. This was territory she never ventured into, not with anyone. But Alexander had shared his pain with her daughter. Maybe it was time to share hers. "He was violent," she said simply. "I married young, too young, to a man I thought I loved. By the time I realized who he really was, I was pregnant. When Lily was born, I saw him hold her, and I saw his father's temper in his eyes. I knew if I stayed, one day he'd hurt her. So I left. That took courage. It took desperation. Courage would have been leaving sooner, before Lily was born into that situation. Courage, Alexander repeated firmly, is protecting your child at any cost. You're an incredible mother, Maria. Lily is lucky to have you. The words, spoken with such conviction, such respect, made something crack open in Maria's chest. When was the last time someone had told her she was doing a good job? When had anyone acknowledged the weight she carried, the battles she fought alone? Thank you, she whispered. 3 weeks into his hospital stay, Patricia Donovan returned with documents requiring Alexander's signature. Business matters that couldn't wait. Maria excused herself to give them privacy, taking Lily to the cafeteria for ice cream, but when they returned, Patricia was still there and both she and Alexander wore serious expressions. Maria, Alexander said, we need to discuss something important. Can Lily play with the nurses for a few minutes? Worry spiked through her. Was he letting her go? Had she overstepped? Once Lily was settled with a nurse who'd promised to show her the therapy dog that visited the hospital, Maria returned to Alexander's room, her heart pounding. Please sit. Alexander gestured to the chair. She sat, her hands twisting in her lap. The aneurysm, Alexander began slowly, made me realize something. I have no family, Maria. No one. If something happens to me, when something happens to me, eventually everything I've built goes to, well, that's the thing. I hadn't decided. I'd been too busy building the empire to think about what happens to it. I don't understand what this has to do with me, Maria said carefully. I'm establishing a trust, Patricia interjected. For Lily. A significant trust that will mature when she turns 18, covering her education, her future, anything she needs. Maria felt the blood drain from her face. Mr. Whitmore, I can't. That's too much. You can, and it's not. Alexander's voice was gentle but firm. Maria, you saved my life. You stayed when no one else did. You've shown me more kindness, more genuine care, than anyone I've known since my parents died. Let me do this. Let me know that Lily will be taken care of, that her future is secure. But there's more, Patricia said. Alexander is also naming you as his healthcare proxy and medical power of attorney. If something like this happens again, you'll be the one who makes decisions. Maria stared at them both, shocked. You want me to make medical decisions for you? We barely know each other. Don't we? Alexander asked softly. You know I like my coffee black, no sugar. You know I work late on Thursdays because that's when the Tokyo markets open. You know I pretend to like running but actually hate it, and I only do it because my doctor insisted. You noticed when I was sick before I did. You knew to bring the newspaper to play Mozart instead of Beethoven because I find Beethoven too intense in the morning. He was right, Maria realized with a start. She did know these things. Somewhere in 3 years of working in his home, she'd learned him, the rhythms of his life, the small preferences that made up a person. You're the closest thing I have to family, Maria, Alexander continued, and the vulnerability in his voice made her throat tight. You and Lily both. I trust you. So please, let me trust you with this. What could she say to that? How could she refuse when he was offering not just financial security, but trust, connection, family? Okay, she whispered. Okay. Patricia smiled and pulled out papers. As Maria signed, her hand trembling slightly, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was now legally bound to this man, trusted with his life in ways that went far beyond her role as his housekeeper. When Patricia left, promising to have everything finalized within the week, Alexander reached for Maria's hand. Thank you, he said. You're thanking me? You just gave my daughter a future. I should be thanking you. This isn't about gratitude, Maria. This is about... He paused, seeming to struggle for words. When I woke up and you were there, when I realized you'd stayed, that you'd kept vigil over me like I mattered. Do you know what that felt like? After years of being alone, of building walls, of relationships that were only ever about business or obligation. You were there because you chose to be. That means everything. Maria's eyes stung with tears. You're not alone anymore, Alexander. I promise you that. Whatever happens, you're not alone. Neither are you, he said quietly. Neither of you are. Not anymore. And in that moment, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and hope, two people who'd been alone for too long found something neither had been looking for: family. The day Alexander was finally discharged from the hospital, 5 weeks after his collapse, dawned bright and clear. Maria had spent the previous day preparing the mansion, ensuring everything was accessible. The physical therapist had been very specific about Alexander's limitations during recovery. No stairs for the first week, which meant converting the downstairs study into a temporary bedroom. Handrails in the bathroom. A wheelchair for longer distances, though Alexander had fought that suggestion with characteristic stubbornness. I can walk, he'd insisted. But should you? The therapist had countered. For short distances, yes. But you tire easily still. The wheelchair is a tool, Mr. Whitmore, not a surrender. Maria had watched Alexander's jaw tighten, recognizing the look. He hated feeling weak, hated needing help. But he'd finally nodded, accepting the reality of his recovery. Now, as Maria drove him home in his luxury sedan, the first time she'd ever driven anything so expensive, and she was terrified of scratching it, Alexander stared out the window in silence. He looked different from the man who'd collapsed in the hallway weeks ago. Thinner, paler, with a haunted quality in his eyes that spoke of mortality newly understood. Are you okay? She asked softly. I'm wondering, he said slowly, if anything will look the same, feel the same. I'm not the same person who left this house 5 weeks ago. No, Maria agreed. You're not. But maybe that's not a bad thing. He glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. You're very wise, you know that? I'm a 27-year-old single mother who barely finished high school. I'm not wise. I'm just experienced in starting over. That, Alexander said, is exactly what wisdom is. When they pulled up to the mansion, Maria was surprised to see a small crowd on the front steps. Mrs. Chun was there, beaming, with Lily bouncing excitedly beside her. The gardener, Marcus, stood with his hat in his hands. Patricia Donovan had come, along with 2 of Alexander's business associates Maria recognized from hospital visits. And there, in the center, was someone Maria had never seen before, a tall, elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. Who's that? Maria asked. Alexander's face transformed, years falling away as a genuine smile spread across his features. That's Eleanor, my mother's best friend. She moved to France after my parents died. I haven't seen her in, God, 7 years. As soon as the car stopped, Lily broke free from Mrs. Chun and ran to the passenger side. Maria quickly got out to help Alexander, but he was already opening his door, already crouching down despite the physical therapist's warnings about sudden movements, already catching Lily as she launched herself into his arms. Mr. Alex, you're home. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. I missed you so much. I missed you too, little one. Alexander's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for visiting me so much. It helped me get better. I knowed it would, Lily said confidently, using the wrong tense as always. Mama said talking helps, so I talked a lot. You did, Alexander laughed, standing carefully with Lily in his arms. Maria hovered nearby, ready to help if he needed it, but he seemed steady enough. And I heard every word. Eleanor approached then, tears streaming down her face. "Alexander," she whispered. "Oh, my boy." Alexander set Lily down gently and embraced the older woman, both of them crying openly. Maria stepped back, giving them privacy, gathering Lily against her side. "When Patricia called and told me what happened," Eleanor was saying, "I took the first flight I could. I should have visited sooner. I should never have stayed away so long." "You're here now," Alexander said. "That's what matters." Eleanor pulled back, studying his face with a mother's attention to detail. "You look terrible." "Thank you, Eleanor. You always knew how to flatter me." "I'm serious. You need rest, proper nutrition, and someone to make sure you don't work yourself into an early grave." Her sharp eyes moved to Maria. "You must be Maria. Patricia told me everything you did. Thank you for taking care of my godson."
Godson.
Maria had known. This was family, real family, just estranged by time and grief. "I just did what anyone would do," Maria said softly. "No," Eleanor said firmly. "You did what very few would do. You stayed when you didn't have to. You cared when it wasn't your job. That's not what anyone does. That's what extraordinary people do." Maria felt her cheeks warm under the praise. The next hour was organized chaos as everyone helped get Alexander settled. Patricia had business updates that couldn't wait. Eleanor had come with enough French delicacies to feed an army, insisting that hospital food had probably ruined his palate. Marcus wanted to discuss the garden. Some plants needed Alexander's opinion on placement, though Maria suspected the old gardener just wanted to see with his own eyes that his employer was truly okay. Through it all, Lily was Alexander's shadow, chattering constantly, showing him drawings she'd made, telling him about the caterpillar she'd found that morning. And Alexander, despite his obvious exhaustion, gave her his full attention, listening to every word like she was telling him the secrets of the universe. Finally, when everyone had left except Maria and Lily, Eleanor had checked into a hotel. Promising to return in the morning, Alexander sank into the chair in his makeshift bedroom with a sigh of relief.
"Home," he said softly.
"I wasn't sure I'd make it back." "You did," Maria said, adjusting his pillows, checking that his medications were organized on the bedside table. "And you'll get stronger every day," the therapist said. "Maria." She stopped, meeting his eyes.
"Sit. Please."
"You've been taking care of everyone all day. Take a break." She wanted to protest that there was still so much to do. Dinner to make, Lily's bath time approaching, tomorrow's schedule to organize. But the look in Alexander's eyes stopped her. She sat. "There's something I need to say," Alexander began, then paused. "Actually, that's not true. There are about 100 things I need to say, but I'll start with this one. I want to change your position." Maria's heart sank. Here it came. He was letting her go, probably replacing her with a professional nurse, someone with actual medical training who could better handle his recovery needs. "I understand," she said quietly, already mentally calculating how long her savings would last, where she and Lily could go. "I don't think you do," Alexander said gently. "Maria, I don't want you as my housekeeper anymore. I want you as I'm not even sure what to call it. My life manager? My personal assistant? My family coordinator? I don't understand." The job would include managing the household, yes, but also coordinating my schedule, attending meetings when I can't, being the point of contact for everything personal and professional. It would mean working closely with me every day, traveling sometimes if needed. The salary would be triple what you make now, plus benefits, plus a separate apartment in town if you want it, somewhere that's truly yours, not just staff housing. Maria stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "Why?" "Because I trust you. Because you're brilliant at managing chaos. You've proven that these past weeks." Because I want someone in my life who sees me as Alexander, not as Alexander Whitmore, billionaire. And because... He paused, vulnerability flickering across his face. Because I'm tired of being alone, Maria. I'm tired of pretending I don't need anyone. This experience taught me that life is too short, too precious, to live it isolated behind walls of my own making. But I'm not qualified, Maria protested weakly. I don't have a degree, I've never. You're the most qualified person I know. You managed my entire medical crisis with more grace and competence than most executives would manage a business meeting. You coordinated with doctors, lawyers, accountants, and business associates without breaking a sweat. You kept my household running, took care of your daughter, and still found time to sit with me for hours every day. If that's not qualified, I don't know what is. Maria felt tears pressing at her eyes. You're offering me a dream job because you feel grateful. But that gratitude will fade. And then where will I be? This isn't gratitude, Alexander said, his voice intense. This is recognition. I'm offering you this because you've earned it, because you're capable of it, because you deserve it. Say yes, Maria. Take a chance on yourself the way you took a chance on staying with a coma patient who might never wake up. From the doorway, a small voice piped up. Say yes, Mama. Then we can see Mr. Alex every day. Neither of them had noticed Lily standing there, elephant tucked under her arm, watching them with her solemn 3-year-old wisdom. Maria looked at her daughter, then at Alexander, then back at Lily. Two people who had somehow become her world in the span of a few weeks. Two people who needed her in different ways, but with equal intensity. Okay, she whispered.
Yes.
I'll do it. Alexander's smile was like sunrise. Thank you. But, Maria added firmly, I'm going to take classes. Online, at night, whatever I can manage. If I'm going to do this job, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to educate myself properly. I'll pay for them, Alexander said immediately. No. Maria, consider it part of your professional development. Most companies pay for their employees' education. Let me do this. She wanted to argue, but the determined look in his eyes told her it was pointless.
Fine.
But I'm paying you back by being the best assistant you've ever had.
Deal.
That night, after Lily was asleep and the mansion was quiet, Maria stood in the kitchen making tea, chamomile for Alexander, as per his doctor's orders, regular for herself. She was still processing the day, the changes, the strange new shape her life was taking. She heard the soft whir of wheelchair wheels and turned to find Alexander navigating into the kitchen. You should be resting, she scolded gently. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking.
About what?
He was quiet for a moment, accepting the tea she handed him. About how lucky I am. I almost died, Maria. But because of that, I've gained something I never had before. A reason to live beyond work, beyond building wealth. I've gained you and Lily. I've reconnected with Eleanor. I've remembered what matters. Everything happens for a reason, Maria murmured, an old phrase from her grandmother. I don't know if I believe that, but I believe we get to choose what we do with what happens to us. And I choose this new start, this chance to be part of something real. He looked at her intently. Thank you for giving me that chance. Thank you for giving Lily and me one, she replied softly. They sat in companionable silence, drinking tea in the quiet kitchen, two people who'd been saved, not just from death or poverty, but from loneliness. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky, the same stars Alexander's mother had sung about, the same stars Maria's grandmother had wished upon. And for the first time in years, both of them felt something that had been absent from their lives for too long. Hope. The first 3 months of Alexander's recovery passed in a haze of physical therapy sessions, business meetings conducted from his home office, and a new rhythm of life that felt both strange and wonderful. Maria had taken to her new role with characteristic determination, attending online business courses at night after Lily went to bed, learning the intricacies of contract law, scheduling, and corporate communication. Eleanor had extended her stay, taking a suite at a nearby hotel and visiting daily. Her presence had transformed the mansion from a sterile showcase of wealth into something warmer, more lived in. She cooked French meals that filled the house with incredible smells, told stories about Alexander's childhood that made him groan with embarrassment, and had taken an instant, fierce liking to both Maria and Lily. "You've made him human again," Eleanor told Maria one afternoon while they prepared dinner together. Before the aneurysm, he was becoming hollow. All work, no joy. Now he laughs. He plays with Lily. He's remembering how to live. It was true. Alexander had changed in ways that went beyond the physical. He worked less obsessively, delegated more freely, and made time for the simple pleasures he'd ignored for years. Reading before bed, walking in the garden, teaching Lily how to play chess, a hilarious endeavor given that she mostly just liked moving the pieces around and making up her own rules where the nights could fly. But on a cold Tuesday in November, everything shifted. Maria was in Alexander's office, reviewing his schedule for the week, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Is this Maria Hernandez?" A woman's voice, professional but with an undertone of urgency. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Lisa Chun from the Family Court of Connecticut. We have your ex-husband, Ricardo Hernandez, here. He's petitioning for custody of his daughter, Lily Hernandez. We need you to come to the courthouse today at 2 p.m. The world tilted. Maria gripped the desk, her knuckles white.
What? No.
"He has no rights. I have full custody. He's claiming abandonment and is requesting the custody arrangement be revisited. You need to be here, Ms. Hernandez. If you don't appear, the judge may make a decision in your absence." The call ended. Maria stood frozen, the phone slipping from her nerveless fingers. "Maria?" Alexander's voice cut through her panic. He'd wheeled himself to the doorway, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" "Ricardo," she whispered. "He wants Lily. He's at the courthouse. I need to." She couldn't finish. For years. She'd had 4 years of safety, of peace. She'd thought Ricardo had moved on, forgotten about them. But of course he hadn't. Men like Ricardo never let go. It was about control, about possession. The thought of him anywhere near Lily made her physically ill. "Tell me everything," Alexander said, his voice sharp with focus. The words spilled out. Her marriage, the violence, the midnight escape with baby Lily, the restraining order that had expired 2 years ago, the custody agreement that had given her full custody because Ricardo hadn't bothered to show up to contest it. "He disappeared," Maria said, her voice shaking. "I thought he'd started a new life somewhere."
Why now?
Why is he coming back now? Alexander was already on his phone. "Patricia? I need you."
Now.
Maria's ex-husband is trying to take Lily. Family court, 2 p.m. A pause. "I don't care what it costs. Get our best family law attorney there. The absolute best." He hung up and reached for Maria's hands. "Listen to me. You are not alone in this. We will fight this together. He will not take Lily. I promise you that." "You can't promise that," Maria said, tears streaming down her face. "You don't know the system. You don't know how they favor fathers now, how they talk about parental alienation and a child's right to both parents even when one parent is violent. Then we'll make them see the truth. Alexander said fiercely. Maria, look at me. She met his eyes. I will not let him hurt you or Lily. Whatever resources I have, whatever influence, whatever it takes, we will protect her. The courthouse was a nightmare of bureaucratic coldness. Patricia arrived with a formidable woman named Catherine Mills, who had a reputation as the best family law attorney in the state. Catherine took one look at Maria's fear and Ricardo's smug confidence, and her eyes turned to ice. Ricardo had changed, or rather, he disguised himself. Gone was the man Maria remembered, volatile and cruel. In his place sat someone who looked almost respectable in a cheap suit, playing the part of the concerned father who'd been denied access to his child. Your Honor, his attorney began, a slick-looking man who'd clearly prepared his speech. My client has reformed his life completely. He's been sober for 3 years, attends therapy regularly, and has a steady job. He deeply regrets his past mistakes and simply wants the chance to know his daughter. Mistakes, Maria hissed to Catherine. He calls breaking my ribs a mistake. Catherine squeezed her hand. Let me handle this. The hearing was brutal. Ricardo's attorney painted him as a reformed man, a victim of circumstances, someone who'd struggled with anger issues, but had worked hard to change. They presented certificates from anger management courses, testimonials from his therapist, employment records showing stability. When it was Maria's turn, Catherine presented a different picture. Hospital records from Maria's injuries, police reports, photographs of bruises, the original restraining order. Character. Witnesses, including Eleanor and Mrs. Chun, testified to Maria's exemplary parenting and Lily's happy, thriving life. And then Alexander wheeled himself to the stand. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said, surprised. I wasn't aware you were involved in this case. I am now, Your Honor, Alexander said calmly. I've known Maria Hernandez and her daughter Lily for 3 years. Maria works for me, and in that time, I've witnessed her dedication to her daughter's well-being. Lily is happy, healthy, and thriving under her mother's care. I've also had the opportunity to observe Mr. Hernandez today, and I must say, I find his sudden interest in fatherhood highly suspicious given his complete absence from Lily's life until now. Ricardo's attorney objected, arguing that Alexander's testimony was biased. But the judge allowed it to stand, clearly interested in hearing from someone of Alexander's standing. I've also taken the liberty, Alexander continued, of hiring a private investigator to look into Mr. Hernandez's recent activities. The results are illuminating. He nodded to Catherine, who presented a folder to the judge. Maria watched as the judge's expression darkened while reading. Your Honor, Catherine said, those documents show that Mr. Hernandez was arrested 6 months ago for assault in a bar fight. Charges were dropped due to lack of witness cooperation, but the arrest record stands. He also has 3 restraining orders filed against him by other women in the past 2 years. Ricardo's composure cracked. That's lies. All of it. The documents are verified police records, Your Honor, Catherine said calmly. The judge's gaze turned to Ricardo, sharp and assessing. Mr. Hernandez, do you deny these allegations? Ricardo's attorney was whispering frantically in his ear, but Ricardo stood up, his face flushing red. There was the man Maria remembered. That bitch poisoned my daughter against me. She took her in the middle of the night. To escape your violence, the judge interrupted coldly. I've read the hospital records, Mr. Hernandez. I've seen the photos of Ms. Hernandez's injuries. Sit down. Your Honor, Catherine said, we request that Mr. Hernandez's petition be denied entirely and that a new restraining order be put in place to protect both Ms. Hernandez and her daughter. The judge looked at Ricardo with disgust, then at Maria with something like compassion. Petition denied. Mr. Hernandez, you will have no contact with Ms. Hernandez or the minor child. A restraining order will be issued today. If you violate it, you will be arrested. This hearing is concluded. The gavel's bang echoed like a gunshot. Maria felt her knees give out, Catherine catching her arm. It was over. Lily was safe. Ricardo exploded, shouting threats and obscenities as security escorted him from the courtroom. Maria didn't hear the words. She was too busy trying to breathe through her relief. "You're okay," Catherine said gently. "He can't touch you now." Outside the courthouse, Alexander was waiting. Maria walked to him and simply collapsed into his arms, shaking with reaction. He held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair. "It's over," he murmured. "You're safe. Lily's safe." "Thank you." Maria sobbed into his shoulder. "Thank you for the attorney, for the investigator, for testifying." "You don't thank family for protecting each other," Alexander said firmly. "That's what we do." That night, after Lily was asleep, blissfully unaware of how close she'd come to being torn from her mother, Maria sat with Alexander and Eleanor in the living room. The fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with warmth. "He'll try again," Maria said quietly. "Men like Ricardo don't give up." "Then we'll be ready," Alexander said. "Catherine is filing for permanent custody on your behalf. And Maria, there's something else we should discuss." He exchanged a look with Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. "I want you and Lily to move into the main house," Alexander said. "Not the apartment over the garage. Here in the family wing. There are 3 bedrooms up there, all empty. You'd have privacy but also security. The house has an alarm system, cameras, a gate. He can't get to you here." "Alexander, I can't." "You can," Eleanor interrupted gently. "Dear girl, you've been living in constant fear for years, always looking over your shoulder. Let us help. Let us give you true safety." Maria looked between them, these 2 people who'd become her family, who'd stood with her today when she needed them most. "How did you say no to that? How did you reject such kindness?" "Okay," she whispered.
Yes.
"Thank you." Lily was thrilled with the move. Her new room was 3 times the size of her old one, with windows overlooking the garden and enough space for all her toys plus the new bookshelves Alexander had installed. She treated it like a grand adventure, completely oblivious to the darker reasons for the change. But Maria knew. And every night, as she locked the bedroom doors and checked the alarm system, she said a silent prayer of gratitude for the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this house, to this family, to this safety. She'd come to the Whitmore mansion as a desperate woman seeking employment. She was staying as something much more precious, someone who belonged. 6 months after the custody hearing, on a spring morning that smelled of jasmine and new beginnings, Maria woke to find Lily's bed empty. A spike of panic shot through her before she heard giggling from downstairs. She found them in the kitchen, Alexander and Lily, both covered in flour, attempting to make pancakes. The kitchen looked like a war zone. Batter dripped from the counters, eggshells littered the floor, and Lily was standing on a chair, wielding a whisk like a sword. "We're making breakfast," Lily announced proudly. "Mr. Alex is teaching me." "I can see that," Maria said, fighting a smile. "Should I be worried?" "Definitely," Alexander admitted, flour in his dark hair. "But we're having fun, right, Lily?" So much fun. This had become their life. Chaotic, messy, wonderful. Alexander had recovered fully from the aneurysm, though he now prioritized different things. He worked from home more, traveled less, and had started a foundation focused on medical research and support for coma patients' families. Eleanor had moved permanently from France, buying a house nearby and becoming a fixture in their daily lives. Maria had earned her business degree online and was now officially Alexander's chief of staff, managing not just his household, but his charitable foundation. She'd discovered a talent for organization and people management that had surprised everyone, including herself. But more than the professional changes, it was the personal ones that transformed them. They'd become a family in truth. Maria, Alexander, Lily, and Eleanor. Unconventional, certainly. Not related by blood, but bound by something stronger, choice. Mama. Lily bounced excitedly. Mr. Alex says we can get a puppy. Can we? Please. Maria raised an eyebrow at Alexander, who had the grace to look sheepish. I may have mentioned it was a possibility. A possibility I would need to approve? Technically, yes. And you thought enlisting a 3-year-old as your co-conspirator was wise? She's very persuasive. Maria laughed, shaking her head.
Fine.
We can look at puppies. But you, she pointed at Alexander, are in charge of house training. Lily shrieked with delight, launching herself at Maria for a hug that left flowery handprints on her robe. Over her daughter's head, Maria's eyes met Alexander's, and something passed between them. A warmth, an understanding, a connection that had been building for months, but remained unspoken. They'd been so careful, both of them. Maria, wary of risking the security she'd found. Alexander, conscious of the power dynamic, unwilling to make her uncomfortable. They existed in a strange limbo, more than employer and employee, more than friends, but not quite what? Neither had been brave enough to define it. Later that day, while Lily napped and Eleanor was at her book club, Maria found Alexander in his study, staring at a framed photograph on his desk. She recognized it, the picture she'd taken in the hospital, of Alexander and Lily asleep together, his arm around her small form protectively. I keep it here, he said softly, not turning around, somehow knowing she was there, to remind myself. Of what? That I almost missed this. If you hadn't been in that hallway that morning, if you hadn't called the ambulance, if you hadn't stayed, I would have died alone, never knowing what it felt like to be part of a family again. Maria approached slowly, standing beside him. You've given us just as much. More, maybe. How can you say that? I gave you money, security. You gave me life. You gave me dignity, Maria said quietly. You treated me like an equal when I was just your housekeeper. You saw potential in me I didn't see in myself. You protected my daughter like she was your own. You taught me that not all men are like Ricardo, that some are kind and gentle and good. That's worth more than any amount of money. Alexander finally turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her breath catch. Maria, I need to tell you something. I've been trying to find the right time, the right words, but I don't think there is a right time for this. Her heart began to pound. What is it? I'm in love with you, he said simply. I think I have been for a while, maybe even before the aneurysm. You walk into a room and everything gets brighter. You smile and my day improves. Lily laughs, and I feel privileged to witness it. You're both woven into every part of my life, and I can't imagine, I don't want to imagine, what it would be like if you weren't here. Maria stood frozen, his words washing over her like a wave. Part of her wanted to deny it, to protect herself from vulnerability. But a larger part, the part that had been growing braver over these months, wanted to be honest. I'm terrified, she admitted. The last time I loved someone, it nearly destroyed me. The last time I trusted a man with my heart, I ended up in the hospital with broken ribs. I know. And if you need time, if you need space, if you need me to never mention this again, I'll respect that. Your comfort, your safety, your peace of mind, those matter more to me than anything else. But, Maria prompted, seeing there was more. But, Alexander continued carefully, I also think you deserve to know that you're loved. Truly, deeply loved. Not for what you do for me, not for your role in this house, but for who you are. For your strength and your kindness and the way you sing in Spanish when you think no one's listening. For the fierce way you protect Lily and the gentle way you cared for me when I was helpless.
For every part of you, Maria.
I love every part of you. Tears streamed down Maria's face, but for once, they weren't tears of fear or pain. They were tears of release, of hope, of possibility. I love you too, she whispered. I've been so scared to admit it, even to myself. But I do. I love you, Alexander. You show me what love should look like, patient and kind and safe. You've never made me feel small or afraid. You've only ever made me feel valued. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. His hands cupped her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. Can I kiss you? She nodded, and when his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. Gentle, reverent, full of promise. Not the demanding, possessive kisses she remembered from Ricardo, but something entirely different, a question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. So, Alexander said, a hint of his usual dry humor returning. How do we explain this to Lily? As if summoned, they heard small footsteps running down the hall. Mama, Mr. Alex. I waked up. Can we get the puppy now? Maria laughed, pulling away from Alexander reluctantly. I think she'll be fine with it. She's been trying to matchmake us for months. Has she? You haven't noticed her conveniently needing us both to tuck her in? Or always wanting us to sit next to each other at dinner? I thought that was coincidence. Alexander, you're a billionaire genius, but you're remarkably oblivious sometimes. He grinned, pulling her back for one more quick kiss. Good thing I have you to point these things out. That evening over dinner, Chinese takeout, because neither of them felt like cooking, they told Lily together. So, Maria began carefully, you know how much Mr. Alex and I care about each other? Lily nodded, mouth full of lo mein. Well, we care about each other in a special way. Like how mommies and daddies care about each other. Lily's eyes went wide. She looked at Alexander. Are you going to be my daddy? Alexander's voice was gentle but clear. Would you like that? Yes. Lily bounced in her seat. Can I call you daddy? Maria saw Alexander's eyes fill with tears. This strong man who'd built an empire, who'd survived death, undone by a 3-year-old's simple question. I would be honored, he managed. Lily climbed out of her chair and into Alexander's lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart, Alexander whispered, holding her close. So much. Maria watched them, her heart so full it ached. This was her family. This was home. Not the mansion, not the money, not the security, though those were blessings she'd never take for granted. But this, the 3 of them together, choosing each other, building something beautiful from the broken pieces they'd all carried. Eleanor arrived an hour later and immediately knew something had changed. Finally, she exclaimed when they told her. I've been waiting for you two to figure it out for months. You knew? Maria asked. Dear girl, everyone knew except you two. The way you look at each other, the way you've built this life together, it was only a matter of time. They celebrated with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for Lily, who insisted on making a toast. To Daddy, she declared, raising her plastic cup high. And to Mama. And to Eleanor. And to the puppy we're getting. We haven't agreed on a puppy yet, Maria protested weakly. Yes, we have, Alexander and Eleanor said in unison, and Lily dissolved into giggles. That night, after Lily was asleep, in her new room, with her new life, secure and loved, Maria stood on the balcony of her bedroom, looking out at the garden bathed in moonlight. She heard Alexander's footsteps behind her, felt his arms wrap around her waist. Happy, he murmured against her hair.
Terrified, she admitted.
But yes, happy. Incredibly happy. We'll take it slow, he promised. Whatever pace you need. I'm not going anywhere. I know. And she did know. Bone deep, soul deep. This was different. He was different. They were building something that would last. Maria, Alexander said softly, there's one more thing. And you can absolutely say no. There's no pressure, but I wanted to ask. She turned in his arms to face him. What? Marry me. Not now, not until you're ready, but someday. Marry me and let me make this official. Let me be Lily's father-in-law, as well as in love. Let me wake up every morning knowing you're mine, and I'm yours. Maria's breath caught. That's not a question. You're right. Let me try again. He dropped to one knee, there on the balcony under the stars, and pulled a small box from his pocket. Maria Hernandez, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life, proving that I'm worthy of you and Lily? Will you be my family, officially and forever? The ring was beautiful, simple, elegant, perfect. But Maria barely saw it through her tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Alexander. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted of salt and joy and promise. Below them, the garden bloomed in the darkness, full of hidden beauty waiting for daylight. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, the same stars that had witnessed a million love stories, a million new beginnings. And inside the mansion, a little girl slept peacefully, dreaming of puppies and families and all the love she'd ever need, never knowing how close she'd come to losing everything, never knowing the price her mother had paid for this safety, this happiness, this home. But she would know love. That was Maria's promise, her gift, her triumph. Lily would grow up knowing that family wasn't about blood, that love could be chosen, that sometimes the people who save you are the ones you least expect. 3 years ago, Maria had walked into this mansion desperate and afraid, seeking only a job, a paycheck, a way to survive. She was leaving that woman behind, stepping into a future she'd never dared imagine, as Alexander's wife, as Lily's mother, as a woman who'd learned that surviving wasn't enough. She wanted to thrive, and surrounded by love, wrapped in Alexander's arms, with her daughter safe and sleeping and her future bright with possibility, she knew she finally would. The next morning, Lily burst into their room. Maria had stayed in Alexander's suite, curled against him all night, marveling at the safety of his embrace, with her usual enthusiasm. Daddy, wake up. We need to get the puppy today. You promised. Alexander groaned good-naturedly. Did I promise today specifically?
Yes.
You said soon, and soon is today. Maria laughed, watching the two of them negotiate, seeing how naturally Alexander had stepped into the father role, how easily Lily had accepted him. This was right. This was meant to be. Okay, Alexander surrendered, as they both knew he would. After breakfast, we'll go to the shelter. Lily shrieked with delight and threw herself onto the bed between them, chattering about what they should name the puppy, what it would look like, all the games they'd play. And as Maria lay there, her daughter bouncing with excitement, her fiancé smiling with amusement, she thought about that morning 6 months ago when Alexander had collapsed in the hallway. How she'd been so afraid, how she'd thought she might lose him before ever really knowing him. But he'd fought his way back. They'd both fought their way back, from loneliness, from fear, from the darkness of their pasts. And they'd found each other. Mama, Lily said suddenly, noticing the ring for the first time. That's pretty. Where'd you get it? Daddy gave it to me, Maria said softly. It means we're going to be a family forever. We're already a family, Lily said matter-of-factly, with the simple wisdom of children who see truth more clearly than adults. We've been a family for ages and ages. She was right, Maria realized. The ring, the proposal, the wedding that would come, those were formalities. The truth was that they'd become a family the moment Alexander had opened his eyes in that hospital and whispered Maria's name. The moment Lily had climbed into his hospital bed and claimed him as hers. The moment Maria had chosen to stay, to fight, to believe that happy endings were possible. You're absolutely right, sweetheart, Alexander said, his hand finding Maria's, fingers intertwining. We've been a family all along. And there, in the morning light streaming through the windows of the Whitmore mansion, 3 people who'd each been alone found exactly what they'd been missing: each other. The puppy they brought home that afternoon was a golden retriever mix named Sunshine, who promptly chewed Alexander's favorite loafers and had an accident on the antique Persian rug. Lily thought it was hilarious. Eleanor declared the dog had character. Maria worried about the damage. But Alexander just laughed, scooping up the wriggling puppy and passing it to Lily, watching his daughter now, truly, giggle as Sunshine licked her face. It's just stuff, he said to Maria, pulling her close. None of it matters. This. He gestured to Lily and the puppy and Eleanor appearing with treats and training advice. This is what matters. This is everything. And Maria, who'd once had nothing but a baby in her arms and determination in her heart, who'd cleaned these halls without daring to dream she might one day belong in them, looked around at her chaotic, beautiful, perfectly imperfect family and knew he was right. This was everything, and it was theirs. 5 years later, at Lily's 8th birthday party, with Sunshine, now well-trained, lying at her feet and her baby brother, Alexander Jr., age 2, sleeping in his father's arms, Lily would blow out her candles and make a wish. When asked what she wished for, she'd say simply, I already have everything I need. So I wish that everyone could have a family as good as mine. And Maria, watching her daughter's face glow with certainty and joy, would meet Alexander's eyes across the room and know that every moment of fear, every tear, every struggle had been worth it. They'd all saved each other in the end. But the story started that morning in the hallway when a housekeeper refused to walk away from a man in need. When love began with 2 words, wake up. And he did. They all did.